and Southern Oregon University present the Oregon Gubernatorial Debate live from the studios of KOBI-TV in downtown Medford. Tonight's debate is sponsored by AARP Oregon, the Cow Creek Foundation, the Oregon Association of Realtors, the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors, the Oregon Beer and Wine Distributors Association, and Oregon Business and Industry.
Dude, I had it going, I had an intro going and all that and everything. I had music playing.
Republican candidate Christine Drazen served the Portland area's 39th district in the Oregon House of Representatives from 2019 through 2021. During her tenure, she was the House Minority Leader. Unaffiliated candidate Betsy Johnson first served in the Oregon House from 2001 until 2005. Then she represented Northwest Oregon's 16th district in the Oregon Senate.
Right before it started.
She held that position until 2021 as a Democrat. Democratic candidate Tina Kotek represented Portland's District 43 and later District 44 in the Oregon House of Representatives from 2008 to 2022. She is the longest-serving House Speaker in Oregon history after first being elected to the position in 2013. Here's our format for tonight's debate. The candidate who receives the initial question will have 60 seconds to respond. The other two candidates will each have 30 seconds to respond to that same question. Both the order the candidates received questions and the order of their 60-second closing statements were determined earlier through a random drawing. Our small studio audience has been asked to hold their applause throughout our debate tonight to be fair to all the candidates. But for now, I'd like to ask them to join me in welcoming our gubernatorial candidates to Southern Oregon. Thank you. We have two panelists joining me in asking questions tonight. To my right, we have Southern Oregon University President Dr. Rick Bailey. And to his right, we have Patsy Smullen, the president of KOBI-TV and KOTI-TV. Senator Johnson, you won the random drawing and will be going first in our debate and in closing statements.
I think we're live.
Our first question, name a vote you cast in the legislature that you later realized was wrong that you wish you could have had back.
Absolutely. I believe that the corporate activity tax is one that I would have a mulligan on. The problem with that tax was that I don't think it was adequately debated. It certainly did not have the kind of public input that it needed to realize its cumulative effects. It's one of those pieces of legislation that I think is iterative and would profit from having the legislature come back and review the very deleterious effect that it has had on business activity. One of my mistakes was that I trusted Speaker Kotek. That part of the conversation included some genuine PERS reforms. We got too much tax and too little PERS reform. So that's one that I would most assuredly take a second look at. I think in all the conversations that I've had with Oregon businesses, it has had a profoundly chilling effect. And in combination with other non-favorable taxes for businesses,
she really doesn't
it is making
like
us
Tina.
a very difficult place to retain businesses or recruit businesses.
Representative Kotek?
Well, I think it's very interesting that Senator Johnson talks about the vote for the corporate activities tax. That money is providing $1 billion more per year for our schools here in Oregon. And to undo that tax would take money out of our schools. And so I think that's a surprising choice there, because I do think those dollars right now are absolutely necessary to make sure our schools have what they need.
Any votes you regret?
You know, I've worked hard every single day. I don't look back, I just look forward.
Representative Drazen?
I look forward.
Thank you, and thank you for having us here today. It's good to be back home. I'm originally from this region. It's great to be here today. I am,
from K Falls.
You know, as the House Republican leader in the state legislature, I had the opportunity to really stand up against single-party control. I had the opportunity to vote in alignment with my district and my community, and certainly on behalf of those people who are not heard across our state. Throughout that process,
Her mic's rubbing
some
against
legislation
her
was
collar.
compromised
I thought it was
legislation.
me.
I would say that Senate Bill 762 is one that I would go back on and reconsider. I supported all of the funding for fighting fires and addressing forest land issues, but certainly opposed the implementation that Kate Brown has engaged in when it comes to the wildfire risk maps.
Representative Kotek, it is very likely that whichever one of you is elected will be elected with a plurality and not a majority, perhaps somewhere around 40% of the vote or less. How will you work to convince the majority of Oregonians who voted against you that you were the right person to lead our state?
That's a really great question. I am planning and will be a governor for the entire state. My career in public service
Bullshit.
in Oregon, from my days at Oregon Food Bank through Children First of Oregon to my 15 years in the legislature, has always been focused on making sure every part of our state can be successful and has what it needs. You're right. Whoever wins this race will not be, have a vast majority of Oregon voters supporting them. So it's going to be up to me as governor to get outside of Salem, be in community with Oregonians across the state, and do a lot of listening. This is about figuring out how local communities who know how to solve their problems can have a stronger partner in the governor, in state government, to make sure we can take on the biggest challenges that are not only facing the metro area, but the entire state: housing, mental health and addiction issues, and the effects of climate change. I believe we can do this together, but it's going to take hard work and dialogue.
Representative Drazen?
She didn't say
Yeah,
anything.
you really can't trust a word that Tina Kotek says on that issue. Throughout her tenure as Speaker of the House, she went out of her way to crush anyone that didn't agree with her approach to legislating, and certainly would take the Portland approach and impose it across the entire state. And as the only really true voice of balance in this race, I will be a person that will reach across the aisle. Because we will likely have Democrat majorities in the legislature, the opportunity to force negotiations only exists with a Republican as governor.
Senator Johnson?
And I'll take exception to that statement. I think the only way to force bipartisan cooperation is with a governor not beholden to any party agenda or ideology. I have staked out a spot in the middle my entire legislative career, to the point that my own team discharged me from one of the most powerful committees in the legislature because I wouldn't toady the company line. I have a history of working across the aisle. I have colleagues that would attest to that. And an independent governor is the place that we can bring the kind of change that we need to actually have the parties work together.
Representative Drazen, our next question is to begin with you. You are all trying to move from being a legislator to being a governor. Their powers are very different. What power of governor do you think is most important?
I believe that the veto is the most important in our current political climate. We have had single-party control for a decade, which means that we have had the legislature really, truly fail to hold the governor to account. And likewise, we've had the governor fail to hold the legislature to account. We need balance. We need common sense solutions that are durable and with long-term value. And you only get that when you have a true possibility of someone holding the legislature to account. You could
I really
add
wish
to that
they'd
the
fix the
importance
microphones on her collar.
the governor's powers under executive orders as well.
Also her
and
hair.
I will be tearing up the governor's executive orders on cap and trade on day one.
Senator Johnson?
It's either her hair or collar is
with,
rubbing against her.
with Christine
It's really
on the
distracting.
power of the veto, and as an independent governor, I'm not running for miscongeniality. I would have absolutely no problem vetoing bills. Imagine a governor who would say, I won't sign a bill into law or a budget into law or make an appointment to a board or commission without bipartisan support. I would also look to the unique set of tools in the governor's toolbox that include activating the state police and the National Guard, and would do so to help fight water theft, pollution, and corruption accompanying the proliferation of drugs in Southern Oregon.
Representative Kotek?
Well, I'm not surprised by the responses from my
Water
opponents
theft.
because Senator Johnson's built her career on voting no on pretty much everything, and Representative Drazen literally walked off the job in 2020. I think the most important power of the governor is to convene, to bring people together,
Tina coming out swinging.
to focus people on problems at hand, identify those solutions, and get them done. This isn't about saying no to things. This is about getting people to yes, and that is the power of the governor, to bring people together to solve problems.
No.
Our next series of questions will
She
come
just
from
went,
Dr. Rick
she's
Bailey.
like kind of attacked and then went nothing.
So Senator Johnson,
back it up.
you'll have this one first. Besides family, to whom do you go most often for trusted advice and why?
Before I answer that question, I'd like to speak to Tina's comment about bringing people together. These two fought like a couple of cats in a sack, to the point that Christine had to flee the state and Tina turned the state police loose on her. To now hear this epic amount of stuff about bringing people together, working together, I reject that categorically. That has certainly not been my experience in working with Tina Kotek. Besides family, who do I go
For trusted advice.
For trusted advice?
She's awesome.
One of my old teachers who has been a very important person in my life and somebody that I can trust to get an honest answer from, even if it means you screwed up, Johnson, and we want you to take a mulligan on this one and think about it again. So that's who.
Representative Kotek.
Betsy's going to tell
I
you the
think,
truth.
One of my strengths is knowing that there are a lot of people in Oregon who have a lot of good ideas and who really love this state. So I think it depends on the topic. If I am working on housing issues, I go talk to the people who are on the street doing the work.
I don't think she knows
If
the
it's
question.
an issue around how do we develop our economy, how do we support business, go to our business leaders. I think the strength that I bring to my leadership style is making sure I talk to the people who understand these things and listen and try to figure out what the best path forward is.
Representative Drazen.
Yeah, thank you. You know, as I have traveled the state, I've had the opportunity to hear from Oregonians in every corner of the state. And it has made me incredibly aware of how important it is to go right to the people that are impacted by legislation. And to the greatest extent possible, throughout my service as governor, I commit to put Oregonians first and to listen to them and their needs.
That's all horseshit.
Representative Kotek, the pandemic exposed how vulnerable older Oregonians are, with more than 93% of the deaths being Oregonians 50 and older, and especially vulnerable persons with disabilities, people of color, and people living in long-term care facilities. Okay. As governor, are there any changes you would make to protect this population?
Absolutely. We saw early in the pandemic